You've been living a lie so fundamental that it has shaped your entire existence. The abandonment you felt, that hollow ache in your chest that whispers you're not enough. It was never abandonment at all. It was redirection. You've built an entire identity around being the one who was left behind. Left by lovers who couldn't see your worth. Left by friends who didn't fight to keep you. Left by parents who couldn't give what they never had themselves. Left by a universe that seemed to turn its back when you needed it most. And in that abandonment, you created your wound, your story, your prison, your excuse. You wear your abandonment like armor, like a badge of honor, like proof that the world is against you. You use it to justify your smallness, your reluctance to try again, your refusal to trust, your hesitation to love with your whole heart. This abandonment has become your identity, the lens through which you interpret every interaction, the filter through which you experience every relationship, the prophecy you unconsciously fulfill with every connection you form. But what if every door that closed wasn't a rejection but an invitation? What if every person who walked away wasn't abandoning you but clearing the path for your soul's true journey? What if every heartbreak wasn't punishment but preparation? The truth is shattering in its simplicity. The abandonment wasn't done to you. It was done for you. And until you understand this, you will remain trapped in your narrative of victimhood, blind to the cosmic choreography that has been guiding you all along. Since childhood, you've been taught to fear the empty space, to dread the silence, to panic in solitude. Society conditions you to believe that being wanted is the ultimate validation, that being chosen proves your worth, that to be alone is to be diminished. When someone walks away, you're trained to chase, to beg, to compromise yourself into unrecognizable shapes just to avoid the terror of being left. You learn to interpret their departure as an indictment of your value rather than a statement of their journey. Your parents taught you this fear without knowing. Your father, who couldn't express his emotions, showed you that love is conditional. Your mother, who feared abandonment herself, passed that anxiety into your bones. The playground where being picked last was humiliation. The birthday party you weren't invited to that confirmed your outsider status. Your schools reinforced it with their cliques and popularity contests. Your religions codified it with their emphasis on being among the chosen, the saved, the elect. Your culture celebrates the coupled, the connected, the constantly accompanied, and pities the solitary soul as incomplete, damaged, left behind. You absorbed these messages through your skin, through your eyes, through the subtle cues and passing comments that formed your understanding of human connection. You weren't taught the sacredness of solitude, the necessity of endings, the gift of departures. Instead, you learned to interpret every goodbye as a judgment of your value, every withdrawal of love as evidence of your inadequacy, every ending as failure rather than completion. And so you became a collector of people, a hoarder of connections that no longer serve you, a keeper of relationships that have outlived their purpose, all because you misunderstood the nature of human bonds. You've been carrying dead weight, dragging corpses of expired connections, preserving relationships embalmed in obligation rather than joy, clinging to people who have already energetically departed, holding them hostage with your need, maintaining connections that drain rather than nourish you, all because you feared the sacred void that comes after goodbye. All because you were never taught that some relationships are meant to be seasons, not lifetimes. All because you believed that longevity equals success, that permanence equals value. You've been measuring relationships by their duration rather than their impact, by their stability rather than their authenticity, by their persistence rather than their purpose. And in doing so, you've been resisting the natural cycles of human connection, the necessary endings that make way for new beginnings, the departures that create space for arrivals. The ancient Stoics understood what you've forgotten, that nothing is permanent, nothing is truly possessed. Every connection is temporary, every bond provisional. It is not the presence but the transience that gives relationships their beauty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, that we should love those around us while remembering that they are not ours to keep, that tomorrow they may be gone. Not as a morbid obsession, but as a clarity that enhances appreciation. When you truly understand the temporary nature of all relationships, each moment becomes precious precisely because it cannot last. Heraclitus whispered it centuries ago. No man ever steps in the same river twice. The river is always changing. The man is always changing. The relationship between them is always changing. To expect permanence in a universe of flux is to guarantee disappointment. Your abandonment anxiety stems from a fundamental error in perception. You believe relationships should be permanent when the universe itself is built on impermanence. You believe connections should endure unchanged when transformation is the only constant. Eastern philosophy teaches the concept of anicca, impermanence, as the foundation of existence. Nothing lasts. Nothing remains unchanged. To cling is to suffer. To release is to find freedom. Buddhism speaks of non-attachment, not as emotional coldness, but as the highest form of love. Love that doesn't demand, doesn't possess, doesn't resist the natural cycles of coming and going. Love that blesses rather than binds. The Tao Te Ching teaches that the empty space, the void, is what gives a vessel its utility. It is the nothingness at the center of the wheel that allows it to turn. It is the emptiness between musical notes that creates the melody. When you resist the natural dissolution of connections that have served their purpose, you resist the fundamental rhythm of existence itself. You fight against the cosmos, and the cosmos always wins. You try to hold back the tide, freeze the river, stop the Earth's rotation, and in your resistance, you create suffering, for yourself and for those you refuse to release. Your soul knows this, even when your ego denies it. Your deeper wisdom recognizes that certain bonds must dissolve for new ones to form, just as the seed must burst and die for the tree to emerge, just as the caterpillar must surrender to dissolution before the butterfly can take flight. What you call abandonment is simply the universe operating precisely as it should. It is the natural order asserting itself despite your protests. It is cosmic wisdom overruling your human attachments. Every relationship has a lifespan, a purpose, a natural arc of connection and completion. Some are meant to last decades, others a season, others mere moments. But all are temporary within the grand scheme of existence. The tragedy is not in their ending, but in your resistance to that ending. Not in the departure, but in your denial of its necessity. The new virtue is not attachment, but sacred detachment. Not desperate clinging, but graceful release. Not fear of loss, but celebration of completion. Not the anxiety of holding on, but the courage of letting go. Imagine yourself not as a fragile child desperate to be held, but as a river, flowing, moving, touching shores and then leaving them, not out of rejection, but out of nature's deep wisdom. The river doesn't abandon the mountain. It fulfills its purpose by continuing its journey to the sea. You are that river. When someone walks away from you, they aren't diminishing your worth. They're acknowledging the completion of a cycle. They're honoring the truth that this particular confluence of souls has served its purpose. They're participating in the ancient dance of approach and withdrawal that keeps the universe in balance. The truly evolved soul doesn't hoard connections out of insecurity. It doesn't manipulate others to stay out of fear. It doesn't guilt or shame those who need to depart. It celebrates each relationship for what it was, blesses its passing, and turns with curiosity toward what comes next. This is love from abundance, not from lack. Love that releases without resentment. Love that trusts the wisdom of timing. Love that knows when its season has passed. This is the love of the sun that shines not because it needs validation, but because shining is its nature. The love of the tree that drops its fruit not because it fears losing them, but because it trusts they will find fertile ground. The love of the ocean that sends waves to the shore knowing they must return to the depths. When you embrace this truth, you stop being abandoned and start being aligned. You recognize each departure as a cosmic realignment, each goodbye as the universe's way of making space for what truly belongs in your life. You begin to see how those abandonments saved you, From mediocre jobs, from tepid loves, from friendships that would have kept you small. You see how they weren't cruel subtractions but merciful corrections, not pushing you away from happiness but steering you toward your authentic path. That partner who left you for someone else, they weren't rejecting your worth but acknowledging the misalignment that you were too afraid to see. That friend who drifted away, they weren't judging you as unworthy but responding to the natural evolution of both your journeys. That family member who couldn't give you what you needed, they were showing you where to stop seeking what will never be found there. They weren't abandoning you. They were redirecting you. And in that redirection was wisdom far greater than the comfort of false permanence. In that redirection was the hand of the universe guiding you toward your authentic path. In that redirection was love in its highest form. Love that wants your growth more than your gratitude, your fulfillment more than your attachment. This new virtue requires trust. Deep, cellular trust in the wisdom of timing, in the intelligence of the cosmos, in the perfection of each arrival and departure, in the grand choreography of your life. It requires presence, the ability to fully inhabit each connection while it exists without anxiously grasping at its future or nostalgically clinging to its past. It requires courage, the willingness to allow relationships to change form, to evolve beyond recognition, or to dissolve completely when their purpose has been fulfilled. And it requires wisdom, the discernment to know the difference between connections that are evolving through temporary difficulties and those that are genuinely complete. Even this, understanding this new perspective on loss and departure, must itself be held lightly. For there will come times when you must be the one who walks away, when you must be the one who creates the void in another's life, when you must be the one who redirects rather than remains. And in those moments, you'll need the courage of impermanence, the wisdom to know that your departure isn't cruelty, it's honesty. It isn't abandonment, it's integrity. It isn't rejection, it's redirection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is absence. Sometimes the highest form of connection is knowing when the connection has served its purpose. In the silence that follows separation, in the emptiness that follows loss, there is not just pain, there is possibility. Not just ending, but genesis. The void is not empty, it is pregnant with potential. The silence is not absence, it is gestation. Consider the field that must lie fallow before it can bear fruit again. Consider the forest that needs fire to clear dead growth and stimulate new seeds. Consider the snake that must shed its too small skin to continue growing. Consider the moon that must wane into darkness before it can wax into fullness again. Your soul knows when it's time for silence, when it's time for emptiness, when it's time to create space for the new by releasing the old, when it's time to step back so that something greater can step forward. This is not abandonment. This is sacred reciprocity with life itself. In the rhythm of connection and release, approach and withdrawal, presence and absence, you find the natural pulse of existence, the inhale and exhale of the cosmos, the systole and diastole of universal consciousness. The mature soul understands that all things move in cycles, that presence must be balanced with absence, that sound must be balanced with silence, that connection must be balanced with solitude. The immature soul clings to permanence, demands constancy, fears the natural rhythms of relationship. It wants endless summer without winter, endless day without night, endless joy without sorrow, endless connection without solitude. But the wise soul knows better. It knows that the sun must set to rise again, that the tide must recede to return, that the breath must be exhaled to be inhaled anew. You weren't abandoned. You were being taught the art of cosmic timing. You were being initiated into the mystery of cycles. You were being shown the sacred nature of endings. And in that teaching was love, not the sentimental love that clings, but the fierce love that liberates. Not the fearful love that binds, but the fearless love that blesses and releases. Look back now at the moments you felt most forsaken. See them with new eyes, not as rejections, but as redirections. Not as wounds, but as windows opening to vistas. You couldn't have imagined from where you stood. That lover who left, they freed you to find a love that wouldn't require your diminishment. They created space for a connection that matches your depth, that meets your authenticity, that mirrors your capacity for presence. That friend who disappeared, they created space for connections that would challenge and cherish you. They made room for friendships based on mutual growth rather than shared history, on authentic resonance rather than convenient proximity. That opportunity that vanished, it steered you toward the path your soul had chosen before your birth. It prevented you from succeeding at what wasn't meant for you so that you could excel at what was. That parent who couldn't see you, they taught you to see yourself. They forced you to develop the inner validation that no external approval could ever provide. They strengthened your self-trust by showing you the limitations of depending on others for your sense of worth. You are not defined by who stayed. You are not measured by who left. You are defined by how you transformed what felt like abandonment into awakening, how you alchemized rejection into redirection, how you transmuted loss into liberation. The abandonments you've experienced weren't punishments for your inadequacy. They were preparations for your expansion. They weren't evidence of your unworthiness. They were expressions of the universe's unwillingness to let you settle for less than your soul's true path. Write in the comments below. I released the story of abandonment. My soul was being redirected. Make this declaration not just with your fingers, but with your spirit. Feel the truth of it in your bones. And as you move forward, carry this wisdom. Nothing that belongs to your authentic path can be taken from you. Nothing that leaves your life was meant to stay. Every departure is directional, not destructive. Every ending makes space for a more aligned beginning. When you trust this truth, when you embody this understanding, your fear of abandonment dissolves. Your anxiety about loss transforms. Your grip on relationships loosens, and in that loosening, genuine connection flourishes. You are not being abandoned by life. You are being guided by it, sometimes gently, sometimes roughly, but always toward your highest expression. Always toward what serves your soul's evolution rather than your ego's comfort. The empty spaces in your life are not evidence of your unworthiness. They are preparations for your expansion. They are the universe's insistence that you deserve more than partial matches, more than compromised connections, more than relationships that require the contraction of your spirit. You weren't abandoned. You were being redirected from the small story your ego had planned to the larger story your soul came here to live. From the limited connections your fear would accept to the limitless connections your courage can create. From the tepid love your wound would tolerate to the transformative love your wholeness can attract. And in that redirection lies your liberation. In that redirection lies your true path. In that redirection lies the love, the work, the life that resonates with who you truly are rather than who you thought you had to be. Remember this. The arrow must be pulled backward before it can fly forward. The tide must recede before it can surge. The night must deepen before dawn can break. The winter must strip the trees before spring can clothe them anew. And you had to experience the illusion of abandonment before you could discover the truth of divine redirection. Now you stand at the threshold of a new understanding, not as victim but as voyager. Not as the abandoned, but as the aligned. Not as the one who was left behind, but as the one who was set free for a greater purpose. The universe never abandoned you. It simply refused to let you abandon yourself by settling for connections that couldn't contain your immensity, by accepting relationships that couldn't honor your complexity, by persisting in situations that couldn't support your evolution. Every departure created space for a more aligned arrival. Every goodbye made room for a more resonant hello. Every ending cleared the path for a more authentic beginning. Your soul knew the way all along, through every tear you shed, through every heart-shattering loss, through every bewildering redirection. It knew exactly what it was doing. It still does. Trust the redirections. Bless the departures. Honor the endings. They are not abandonment. They are the universe's love language. They are not rejection. They are cosmic recalibration. They are not failure. They are freedom calling you home to yourself. You weren't abandoned. You were being loved in the most profound way possible. You were being guided toward becoming who you truly are. And that guidance continues with every person who enters your life and with every person who leaves it, with every door that opens and every door that closes, with every yes and every no. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow it. Your soul knows the way.